Hey everybody, back here on YouTube and doing another video here. Want to talk about something that I'm sure you've probably been hearing about recently, but I'm going to talk about the recent reports about the diesel fuel shortage that this country is having. Wonderful. Just in time for the election cycle. Of course, Joe Biden tried to get the OPEC countries or the countries in OPEC to try to ramp up production just in time for the election to try and help him out. But things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. Now we have the threat of diesel fuel shortages, which will result in the cost of diesel going up across the country. And here's the reality of the situation with that. Companies do not eat cost. They're not going to eat these costs. They're not going to eat these fuel costs. They're going to pass the cost on to the consumer. So not only is the price of diesel going to go up, because that's what happens whenever there's a shortage on something as in demand as diesel, you're also going to have the price of goods at the store. You're going to see them go up significantly because you can't just continue to eat a price spike in fuel and just continue to charge the same price you were charging on your goods and your services that you're providing. So instead of you paying $2.50 for that loaf of bread, we could be looking at paying $3.35 for that same loaf of bread, because that's what's going to end up happening. These costs are going to get passed on to the consumers. But here's an article here by Forbes magazine that I find very interesting. So they go into they give a little bit of detail as far as the production of diesel fuel. The title goes, "Why the U.S. has a diesel shortage." Last week, Energy Information Administration, that's EIA, reported that distillate inventories were at their lowest level since 2008. The primary distillates are diesel, jet fuel, and heating oil. However, in 2008, distillate levels were low coming out of spring. Currently, they are low going into fall. That's far worse than the situation in 2008. Distillate demand generally spikes in spring when farmers are planting crops, and in the fall when they are harvesting those crops and people start buying fuel for winter. Thus, a low distillate inventory in late April 2008 isn't quite as serious as a low inventory in October of 2022. In fact, distillate inventories haven't been this low in October since the EIA began reporting this data in 1982. Okay, so in other words, we have not had the low level of distillate inventory for diesel like this in 40 years. Another thing that Joe Biden's setting a record on of 40-year stuff. Mind you, this is also the 40-year, people talking about, the highest inflation in 40 years. I don't find it to be a coincidence that the distillate inventories of 40 years ago also match the record inflation we're seeing from 40 years ago. I'm seeing some similarities here when it comes to bad economic policy. But the article goes on to continue. Why is there a shortage this year? There are 4 factors, but 2 of those factors are in play every year. As mentioned above, distillate demand spikes this time of year, but it does that every year. This is also the time of year when refineries are doing maintenance. They do tend to do this in the fall and spring, which is when demand is lower and the weather is decent, so refinery capacity drops at this time of year. Third, U.S. refinery capacity has fallen in the past few years as several unprofitable refineries were closed. So that's a new factor that has appeared in the past couple of years. So they're saying these refineries were unprofitable. I guess, maybe, possibly. It's kind of tough to stay in business too when you have a president who's literally, quite literally gone to war against the energy sector, and instead he wants to put the oil and gas companies out of business. So they might call them unprofitable, but it may make sense to shut things down if you see that your future as a company is going to start going down. So that's something to keep in mind with that analysis. And it says, but the primary reason for the cutoff is Russian imports. Prior to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. was importing nearly 700,000 barrels per day of petroleum and petroleum products. Most of those imports were finished products and refinery inputs that boosted distillate supplies in the U.S. This is why the strategy here of, okay, we're going to stop getting this supply of fuel from Russia, which I understand with the war in Ukraine. That's one thing. But there needs to be a plan B. And my question here is, was there ever a plan B? Did anyone think about this? If you're going to cut off the refined diesel fuel that we would be getting from Russia, you need to have a plan B. And a plan B is not cutting off the Keystone XL pipeline. A plan B is not creating all this legislation and putting all these various roadblocks in the way of the oil and gas companies to be able to drill here, to be able to produce here. But this is part of the overwhelming push for this climate change agenda that Joe Biden has wholeheartedly bought into. And the very idea of diesel shortages, that word shortage shouldn't even be a word that's mentioned. We just had energy independence 2.5 years ago. No, 2 years ago we had energy independence. Why now are we talking about diesel shortages? I mean, as I said before, one of the biggest things about this is that the cost of goods at the grocery store is going to skyrocket. People are having a tough enough time buying food as it is now. What happens when we start seeing diesel shortages or gas stations just start running out of diesel altogether? First of all, you're not even going to have product on the shelf. You're going to completely ruin the supply chains. The supply chains are already busted as it is. They've been messed up for months now. But you're going to have supply chain shortages. You're going to have trucks not even delivering until 2 days, 3 days, 4 days late because they didn't have the diesel fuel to get the items to the store. And the items that do get on the shelves, people are going to start paying crazy prices for these things. But once again, this is why policy matters. But Joe Biden said, though, that he was going to start doing this kind of stuff. He made it clear he was going to go to war against the oil and gas companies. But of course, the solution to this is just buy an electric car. That's what he and Karine Jean-Pierre would tell you. Well, just buy electric vehicles. That's what you need to do. Just buy an electric car. Pay the $75,000 to get an electric car that you can't afford. It's madness. It's absolute madness. And I hope people are aware of this stuff. Once again, I encourage y'all to get out and vote November 8th. Start voting these crazy climate alarmists out of office. I'm all about clean energy. I'm all about doing things that make our environment safer. If we have the technology to do it. Simply saying, we're developing the technology, but we're going to start cutting off the technology we have. It's insanity. It makes no sense. It's like when the car was being invented. People didn't say, oh, the car's being invented, so guess what? We're going to go ahead and start taking everyone's bikes and destroying them. People didn't do that. You still had people using their bikes to get to work. You didn't just throw all the bikes away and say, well, we're working on the car, guys. The car is coming, it's coming, it's coming. But if it wasn't there yet, why in the world would you throw everyone's bikes away? So what? So people can't bike to work now? They've all got to start walking? It doesn't make any sense. It's lunacy. And that's what's happening right now, is people are making irrational decisions, putting in place irrational policies, making decisions where there's no plan B, and they just expect for us, the American people, to just simply take it as if nothing's going on, nothing's going wrong. Things have gone horribly wrong when it comes to the way energy is being handled in this country. Once again, there's an all-out war by the radical left to drive energy out of the picture, push it out of the picture. We need energy, we need oil, we need fossil fuels, we need these things. This is the lifeblood of the American economy, and people are setting us up for having a very cold, very hungry winter. It's crazy. It's insanity. But once again, I wanted to put this on y'all's radar. I would suggest that if you don't have emergency food supplies, now's the time to do it. It'd be a good idea, not to panic anyone, but it's good to have some canned goods, some things in reserve, so that way you're not going crazy trying to get whatever's on the shelves. But once again, policy matters. Policy matters. These are bad policies. They're nonsensical policies. I don't understand why it is we put ourselves in this position. Once again, I get the Russia-Ukraine deal. If you're the president, that would be more of a reason why you would want to boost the production here in the U.S. instead of relying on a source that we're no longer using. So anyway, that's what I got for tonight. Please feel free to click the like button, hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and check out my other videos as well. And I'll see y'all next time. Thank you.